fabled heat, where magic meets desire. Subscribe to ignite the fantasy.
My breath hitched, the rough paper of the Ofuda trembling in my grip. It couldn't be. My mind rebelled, scrambling for an alternative, but the ugly truth slammed into me. This simple charm held the key. For weeks, I'd been blindly groping, trying to reinvent the wheel. All the while, the answer was right here, hidden in plain sight, wrapped in centuries of tradition and ignorance. Ofuda, I knew, were the sole domain of mortals. Unbound like Yuki or Yakai were barred from creating them. The same principle applied when making them. No magical interference. Each charm and focus alike channeled magic through an input, shaping it to produce a desired effect. The damned thing looked so familiar because it was a two-dimensional magical array, using the asterisk characters themselves as a medium. It was like looking at a primitive circuit board etched in ink, the kanji acting as conductors. A quick sweep with my detector confirmed the paper itself was inert, so the ink was the catalyst. An inverse of my own process, where I trapped energy within crystalline lattice, the ink seemed to attract it. I needed tests. Maybe the ink was simply more conductive than air, maintaining the energy required for the effect to take hold before it bled out. But the point, my foci and the priest's charms worked on the asterisk same goddamn principles. There would be a design overlap. I could asterisk learn from them. Compound magic lay within reach, all thanks to artifacts working outside a living body. A yak-repelling focus that only affected others, leaving Yuki and Rin untouched, was within reach. Esoteric effects, too. Lord Hall, are you all right? I jolted, Takuto's voice ripping me from my reverie. He was leaning back, eyes wide, practically falling out of his chair. My apologies, Lord Hall. I didn't mean to interrupt, but you've been staring at it for a while, he stammered. I hope my poor brushwork didn't offend you. I inhaled, then exhaled. My heart hammered, a manic grin stretching my lips. It's fine, I managed, laughing, bolting upright and pulling a knife from my pocket. I'll be back in a second, just sit tight, all right? Don't leave the room, and please, try to make any other charm you remember. I sliced the Ofuda free, ignoring Takuto's flinch, and bolted for the bathing room, a giddy exhilaration fueling my steps. Yuki, I yelled, pounding on the door. I didn't know, how didn't I know? This is huge. I giggled, a sound that probably bordered on deranged. 1 second, please, she called, and I heard her rise from the water. I paced, my mind a whirlwind. I had to get to the workshop. How did these things really work? Was leaking part of the process? If partially processed energy was key, the possibilities. The charm repelled spirits and pests. What weaknesses did it tap into? Was that weakness also shared by vermin, or did it function on different principles there? So many questions. It's all the same, Yuki, I rambled as she presumably dried herself. A wave of heat radiated from under the door. I don't know why I didn't see it. Of course, there were underlying mechanics. Why did I think it would be arbitrary? The door slid open. Yuki emerged, smelling faintly of lavender, which was odd, considering I knew we didn't have lavender soap. She was also fluffier. I expected more time to soak before you came over, she said calmly. You must have learned something interesting watching the priest make an asterisk Ofuda. I nodded, thrusting the talisman at her. She took it, her brow furrowing as she read the text. This is a blessing to keep pests like Akaname and rats from a household while the owner is away, she stated. I don't see how it's so special. See this at the top? I tapped the section. It's familiar, very familiar. It's like an inverse of the filter that makes sure only earth-aligned magic goes into the correct capacitor on my early gauntlet designs. Her pupils widened. I was never a scholar of priestly matters, at least to my memory, she stated, but what does that mean to you? This might be the key to asterisk everything, I paced, energized. You've noticed all my creations use the most basic forms of magic. Something as complex as a barrier with an allow list can't use only those. This is my chance to figure out how to use something more complicated and move into esoteric magics. Even if that's out of the cards, that means there's millennia of practices and knowledge that I can draw on once I get examples to pick apart. Yuki's gaze intensified. Could you turn a repelling Ofuda into a focus? Only Rin and I allowed inside its confines. We could run roughshod. Maybe, I thought of the same thing. It depends on how content Kiku is to play around us, but I'm not sure we have that time. Fighting the Nameless in winter seems like a nightmare, and the village will be suffering badly by then, even if we subvert the defenses to work with *us rather than against us. My grin twisted. I can think of a weakness or two a static setup based on my filter system would have, I said, ideas swirling. Quick quiz, Yuki. How does this differ from a focus slotted into my gauntlet? A sly grin flickered onto Yuki's face. Oh, does the wise and mighty John have a lesson for me? I thought you had forgotten all about teaching me after you got your new, younger student, she teased, faux pain in her voice. I snorted, shaking my head, a faint blush warming my cheeks. The adrenaline began to subside, replaced by a steadier thrum. Yuki, I complained, my tone a bit high-pitched. I suppose I can guess, she soothed, tapping her lip. Her eyes narrowed, her smile widening as she stared at the charm, gathering her thoughts. There are many things. An asterisk Ofuda isn't portable and must be attached to a host structure to take effect. The effect can only be slightly modified after the charm is created, while your foci have little levers you can pull in real time. One of these Ofuda operates continuously without oversight, at least until the environment and decay taint the charm, while your gauntlet requires active use. On top of all that, your foci can accomplish far more direct effects easily, while charms like this specialize in the slow and subtle. She was asterisk, so asterisk close. One of those things is very, very important for solving our current problems with locating the priest's little traps, I said cheerfully. It isn't that it isn't portable, at least not entirely, because that on its own doesn't reveal any inherent vulnerability more than a hidden guard tower. The rigidity is a possibility. If you locate one, you can locate them all through the same method, but that does not provide the answer by itself. She fell silent, then her eyes widened, and she inhaled sharply. I see, her words were quiet, airy. It's an effect that continually works, and it has no way to store power as your gauntlet does, so it has to be constantly drawing magic from somewhere to maintain it. Her eyes met mine, warm as a sunrise. Very nicely done, she praised. I eagerly nodded, beaming. Right, so, the difference is going to be marginal, but as it works, it's going to have to pull in power, and the magic detectors aren't purely binary. If I were to point one at something like you, it'd respond more strongly than if I pointed it at Rin. What that means is that I can make a device that can tell us which side has slightly less dense ambient magic, pointing us directly to the nearest thing consuming magic from the very air. If I were in better shape, I could do something similar, but this is a clever workaround, Yuki hummed, something thoughtful lurking behind her eyes. It won't be easy, you know. The difference between a talisman and the great tide of magic washing over the world will be fractions of a drop. You won't be able to search from your flying disc, either, and I would wager the emanations of power from either Rin or I holding onto whatever you make would throw it off entirely. Maybe not, I admitted, but we only really have to find one, don't we? Then we can make something more specialized with that example. I mean, I'm still going to rig a detector with the asterisk Ofuda that our priest is making, but I doubt it's going to work now that I know how they actually work. Our priest, Yuki mimicked, raising a curious brow. Are you planning on adopting him too? A full-body shiver racked me. No, never, I groaned. The guy isn't the worst person I've dealt with, but that's not a high bar. He's still one of the local priests. Yuki's vulpine chuckle was equal parts comforting and infuriating, especially when she patted my head. Having nothing nice to say, I said nothing at all, looking away with a pout. Her hand trailed down to my shoulder, resting easily. Fuck, I could use a good soak, but it was still early. Maybe I'll relax in the bath later. If you'd like, I could take over your duties and see to Takudo while you go to your workshop, Yuki offered. I stiffened. Well, I couldn't stay mad at her. Thanks, Yuki, I beamed, hurrying off, pausing to grab the motion magic detectors from around the house, not by my room, of course. If anything got past my defenses, Yasuk, Rin, Asterisk, and Yuki, I'd be screwed anyway. If only I had passive defenses that weren't just detection. Landmines were out. Could I make a non-lethal trap? Another project for my backlog. Here I thought getting dumped into another world would free me from crunch, but some things are universal, like taxes and spite. Say if the nameless are dealt with, I probably should put a portion of their wealth aside for back taxes to hopefully less borderline demonic tax collectors. Perhaps Unbound get an exemption because of the risk of collecting from them. I hope and pray for that, because the thought of navigating the tax code threatens to give me conniptions. I was getting sidetracked. With my materials, I hurried past Takudo, only pausing to see that he wasn't drawing any more Ofuda. Drat, I would have loved to take more examples in case inspiration struck. Oh, Yuki wanted to talk to you, bye. I shouted on my way by, jogging over to my workshop, hurriedly unblocking the door and going to work. First, I had a rough idea of how to make the tool I needed. It wouldn't be the most precise, but it didn't have to be. Once we got close enough, I could bust out the magic detector. But what if the active deterrence field interfered? After all, it had to be putting out asterisk something. I couldn't rely on the local magic being background level. I'd probably get loads of false positives. Idea. I grabbed the insulating sap I used to seal my foci, along with a sheet of metal. Popping the lid off the pottery, I put a dollop onto the sheet before rushing to my open-air vacuum bench. Flipping a series of switches, the bench droned and white lights flicked on. These weren't essential to the device's function. Of course, if something created an invisible field of suffocation, you damn well wanted to know when it was running before you leaned a bit too far forward and had your lungs depressurized. From there, I put on the infused gloves and placed the sap in the airless field, removing every bit of air. I smoothed the sap into a thin sheet before taking my Magi welder and hitting it with a burst of order to forcibly crystallize it. Unfortunately, it left the material terribly brittle. It'd be no good for anything beyond laboratory use as is, sadly. Thankfully, I had leftover glass around. I wasn't sure what it was originally supposed asterisk to be, given that it was found broken on a cart tossed into the river, but shards worked just as well. It was quick and easy to melt them down, too, which I then poured into a circular mold to make a slightly thicker circular sheet. With a steady hand, I trimmed the sap and transferred it from the metal to the glass, then placed another chunk of glass on top, sealing the sides with a thicker layer of the magic-repelling goop to prevent any magical energy from leaking in from the inside and bypassing the filter. All in all, the construct was perhaps half a centimeter thick. I had plenty of time to think about the design for the other device I needed to name, while I worked on the following 3 lenses with varying thicknesses of sap between the glass plates. The more complicated design work began. In theory, all I had to do was compare 2 outputs, figure out which one was greater, and then put out energy only asterisk to the correct side. It was an easy problem under most circumstances, but the question was more about how to do it asterisk fast with the parts I had on hand. Making an electrical comparator would be ideal, but I certainly didn't have anything like that on hand. The simple answer was something mechanically antagonistic, but I wasn't sure what I had that would work. Maybe something with 2 pulleys fighting over a string, but then that run into issues if one side was dominant for too long, risking quickly burning out from strain or snapping the string, causing false readings. I was an idiot. I could just make a tiny wooden tube and throw an iron ball bearing in the middle. Slap a simple electromagnet made with a nail and some copper wire, fed by a detector at either end of the tube, and the ball will be pulled towards whatever side is stronger, creating a simple switch once it can detect which side the ball is on. That could be done with a simple pressure switch. I'd just have to attach a level to the top of the device, which I could borrow from one of my construction tools. Yeah. Then all I needed to do was find a way to rig the detectors to detect all around, which was honestly as simple as stripping the coating off them. From there, I could stack a few rows of tubes into an asterisk shape, and I had a bona fide magic compass. With a smile, I continued my work, quickly finishing up the sheets and beginning the main project itself. Oh, they weren't going to know what hit them. I even had a few ideas about what to do once they found the asterisk Ofuda. After all, the charms only activating once they were rooted was an interesting fact. First, though, John had to finish his wizard compass.